Since we started making content for righteous and rich entrepreneurs, I've gotten so many messages from brothers who've been inspired and want help making money online. They're hungry for financial freedom so they can seek knowledge, do hijrah, and live life on their terms with Allah's permission. But here's the truth. I can't help you. I personally only work with 7 to 9 figure entrepreneurs. With that said, there is one brother that I trust more than anyone else that helps beginners start their online businesses with Allah's permission. In fact, I've sent him dozens of brothers already, and time again, he's helped them make consistent money online. Look, I have a lot to lose by putting my name behind someone I don't have full confidence in. But this brother, I've vetted him and his team and his method. I trust him with Allah's permission. Which is why I'm ready to risk my 10-year plus reputation on telling you this brother, he will help you make money online, inshallah ta'ala. So if you're interested, go to the link below and you can apply for his mentorship. With that said, let's get back into the discussion.
Would you say that there's morality in the army, in these wars, when it comes to the West against?
Definitely not. I mean, this is a podcast series in and of itself. So just very briefly, I'm going to explain what I did in the military.
West government, like international laws and all these things, systems that they put in place to make sure that there's no, war crimes committed and stuff like that?
I'll give you a very simple example. Iraq war, 1 million civilian casualties, not combatants, and that's a conservative number.
Casualties as in killed or injured?
Killed, yeah, killed. Families, women, children, men, wiped off entire family lines that we'll never hear about again. Yeah, Basra, Baghdad was some of the most beautiful places in the world. We absolutely demolished that place, obliterated it off the face of the planet, bro. Yeah, it's one of the things that stops me from sleeping at night, knowing that I was part of all of that. Nobody answered for those crimes, bro. Nobody answered for those crimes. And this was something that was openly declared that, yes, we lied about this. This is not like a conspiracy. This is public domain.
About WMDs and all that.
This is something that we've confirmed time and time. Blair, just last week, came out apologizing. Doesn't mean anything. But the fact that he's finally admitted, yes, I made an error, blah, blah, blah. He should be in The Hague. But he was never, ever held to account. Nobody was ever held to account. So when we talk about those kind of things, yeah, like that's my opinion on that, without a doubt. That whole system, our money, every time we're paying tax dollars and tax pounds, doesn't matter how you paint it, doesn't matter what picture you try and put around it, doesn't matter how much, what am I going to do, where am I going to go? Yeah, it doesn't matter what you try and say. When you follow the money trail, it quite simply goes from your pocket to the government's pocket. That is it. There's no other way to put it, And this is one of the reasons why hijrah is so important. We have a responsibility, man. Do we really think we're going to be answered? Like, we're going to be asked about the atom. Yeah, if you committed a sin equal to the weight of an atom, that sin will be brought forward. Sure. Do we really think we're going to escape this questioning? Like, and for me, it's a real question for me. People talk about, how do you feel about it? Bro, I still can't sleep at night. Yeah, I have sometimes, and this is a very personal thing, I have severe PTSD from what happened to me. Bro, I have to, something called phenobarbital, the medical people will know about this. It's a tranquilizer, bro, I have to take sometimes to sleep. Yeah, that's the kind of impact it had.
How did you get through it while you were in it? Because you were there for like 9 years, you said, right?
9 years, bro.
So how did you, because you mentioned these atrocities that were happening and you saw them in your own eyes and you were even taking part in some way.
Yeah.
What, did these questions come up in your mind during that time?
When I was 18, my first tour was when I was 18. So I was in light infantry. My first deployment, I was part of infantry. I was an infantryman. So 18 years old, I was super excited to get out. It was Iraq. It was going to be like, wow. I mean, kids play Call of Duty now and get excited. This was in real life. You got live ammunition. You've been trained at a very high level. I've just been taught how to use the underslung grenade launchers. So your rifle gets to get all these attachments. My SUSAT sight. I'm like, yes, let's do this. And then you do something called it's called battlefield prep. It's like a 3-month quick course of just basically you go to all these rural areas around the UK where they've set it up like villages and you kind of just do constant drilling. So you're like hyped to go, so you're not thinking about any consequences and you're 18.
Yeah.
But most 18-year-olds, all they care about is eating and playing COD. That's it.
Yeah.
There's nothing else in their mindset, There's very few 18-year-olds that'll find that have any other concept in thinking about anything else. I was 18, and you're out there, you're with your boys. There's one interesting story I was like talking about. Funny thing happened to me, and this is what kind of changed my career path. So there was a vehicle checkpoint, and my boss comes over to me. It was a joint American operation, so with Americans and the British. At this vehicle checkpoint, he comes over to me and goes, "Khan," like, "Yes, boss." Because you speak Arabic, don't you? Like, "No, boss." He's like, "Why not?" I was like, "Because I grew up in Bolton, sir." He's like, "I've just told the Americans that you speak Arabic, so you need to get over there." I was like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, get over there. You need to speak Arabic to them." I'm like, "What the heck?" So, bro, like, there's a guy in a truck trying to get through the checkpoint with his family next to him, and this guy's like giving me Iraqi Arabic, bro. So it's not even like, you got Arabic, your first hand, you got Iraq Arabic, is different. So I'm like, I'm just like, so the Fatiha, bro. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Rahman Rahim. Malik Yawmiddin. Yeah. I'm just proper blagging. The Americans don't know what's going on. Yeah. Somehow we got this family through the checkpoint. And then I got back to my boss and he was like, "Listen, Imran, you kind of wasted in the infantry regiments. I think you need to change regiment." Then he recommended for me to go into the intelligence corps.
Okay.
So he got me on a language course. I'd completed my degree in that, and then I got commissioned into the intelligence corps, and then my whole career changed. And then that's when I really started seeing how kind of, and there's no other word for it, but how evil these government organizations are. Quite literally how evil it is. You start seeing the kind of weapons that they can drop. I'll give you an example. There's this thing called JDAM.
The bunker buster.
Yeah, bro, this thing on a larger scale, it can take a kilometer grid square off the map. Gone. 1K, gone. Pew. Yeah, that's the sort of, like, I mean, these guys are dropping these like those Skittles, bro. Like it was nothing, on populations that like hadn't been checked, hadn't been vetted. No one had done foot patrols through based on UAV drone footage that was poor in those days. Very poor footage in those days. So there was no kind of, because they knew there was no accountability, and a lot of it was testing weapons. We had weaponry that had never been tested.
You hear about that happening in Gaza a lot.
Like, for example, Challenger 2 had never been tested really in the desert. Challenger 1, which is a tank, was really failed in Gulf War 1. We realized how poor it was because of the desert environment. It kept jamming, kept breaking down. SA-80A1, which was the first iteration of the SA-80 rifle, assault rifle the British use. And that in itself is scary, bro. I'll give you a little bit about that in a second. But the A2, it had never been tested in warfare. Not in desert anyway. So this was like the perfect opportunity to do that. So a lot of bits of equipment that we'd never ever tested before were suddenly being tested, And this, I'll give you an example. This is the last thing I'll finish on this. This is a thought process. Think about how the British Army thinks. So we use something called the 5.56 ballistic round. Most armies use 7.62 rounds. That kill you on boom, you're dead. Yeah, go straight through you.
AK-47.
Yeah, AK-47, C6s, whatever, The 5.5, so why are we using a 5.562 ballistic round, which is hard to manufacture, rare around the world, and it's specific to our rifle? Nobody else in the world uses the SA-80, which is the A3 we're using now.
But isn't the 5.56 the standard NATO round?
No. So, and I'll explain why. The British use the ballistic version as well. You got it very specifically. It doesn't kill you. But this round doesn't kill you. It maims you. So this is the thought process. Think about the British think, yeah. On the battlefield, if I shoot and kill you, your colleague's going to carry on going. If I shoot and maim you, it's going to take 2 other soldiers to take you off the battlefield.
Wow.
And this is the whole thought process. From beginning to end, they are cunning, they are snake-like. Like I questioned my boss. Like on my 3rd tour, I finally got this conscience. I said, "Boss, what the hell are we doing here, man?" I was like, "These people don't want us here." Like I was working in strategic intelligence at that point. Like I was writing reports that were landing on the PM's desk. I had I'm going above DV clearance at that point.
What's DV?
So you have like different levels of clearance, SC vetting, developed vetting, and then you have above that. Strapped on DV is like above DV clearance. Like your top secret, like top level stuff. So you're getting a lot of raw intel, and then you kind of have to make some very strategic mission objective decisions based on that. So
there's probably a lot of stuff you can't even talk about, right? You probably got like a...
Yeah, you kind of can't, because a lot of it's dead operations now. They're not active operations, so it doesn't really matter too much. People write books about this stuff all the time. I got offered a publishing deal once. They wanted to write a book and they wanted to call it Her Majesty's Mujahid. Because the way I looked, they were like, yeah. they were like, you had the Mujahid, and they were your Her Majesty's Mujahid at the time. I was like, yeah, so I should have taken the deal, bro. But yeah, so I said to my boss, "Boss, like, what the hell are we doing here? Like, this doesn't make sense to me anymore." When you said, did you not feel like...
Yeah.
I think I was like 22 at the time. And I was finally got this conscience, and I'm like, this is not okay. We cannot be doing this. And then he said to me, Imran, listen to me.
But sorry, just before you carry on, before that, was there ever like because I remember like even when I was younger, and I wasn't really practicing, but like, let's say there was a sport, and it was like Morocco against Sweden, for example, I would always feel a natural inclination towards a Muslim country. So I'd always feel like I would always side with the Muslim side. So was that ever in your mind that like I'm dealing with Muslims here? Was that ever a thing or not? Because
no, it wasn't. Do you know why? And there's a reason for it. Especially when I was in Afghan, because I thought I'd really see the Islamic culture. You didn't. You saw this very violent culture.
From the Afghan side.
Because you got to bear in mind, the original Taliban that we would call the Taliban, or the original fighters, the original culture had been decimated. You had faction leaders that were now trying to take control, warlords, and then you had people that we'd appointed trying to create you're trying to put parks in, you're trying to put hospitals in and schools in. Like, they don't want that, bro. They just want to go back to normal life. So you're causing more chaos. So it was a very chaotic environment. So you don't really see what do we associate with Islam? It wasn't like it was masajids full and people praying salah and people in adhan. None of that, bro. It was chaos, bro. It was chaos.
Bullets and bombs.
Yeah. So that feeling leaves you in a sense. And then, bro, some of the evil, because Muslims can be bad people as well.
Absolutely.
And non-Muslims can be bad people.
Absolutely.
And so my last job in the military was an interrogator. That was my last job in the military.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was part of the Joint Forces interrogation team. So that was my last job in the military. And I spoke to some seriously deranged psychopaths, that had no business even saying I'm a Muslim, because it was irrelevant.
Yeah.
Is irrelevant. But that's a whole different podcast maybe. But so like this, I said to my boss, I said, look, boss, what are we doing? So he said, look, we are the grey men. They used to call us the grey men. I said, so what do you mean by that, boss? That made no sense. He goes, we do the dirty work to keep the mission clean. That was how they kind of...
Almost as I say, black ops.
Yeah,
right?
to a certain extent. Yeah. We do the dirty work to keep the mission clean, And they still don't explain to you the mission. You still don't know what the mission is. But they use these kind of Hollywood lines and these, romanticized ways of thinking to try and justify the evil that they're doing.